30 pages, 30 days. Challenge number 6. This is day 6, March 6th. And the prompt today is talking about, when you don't have enough time to produce a detailed portrait, you rely on what's called gesturing. And with the gesture, you just make a few careful lines and some shadows just to give your subject some individual character. And then you can vary the size of these subjects on a page to create a more interesting composition. And then you can link the characters together with text or patterns or colors, shapes, or even dissociated items. So here's my first character. This is a salamander, or spotted salamander. The reference photo was from a Sally rally the other night. There is a secret salamander society, and they go out on dark and damp late February or early March nights with flashlight in hand to help these salamanders cross the roads to get to their breeding grounds. And so that's where my reference photo is from. First, I lightly sketched the salamander with a pencil, and then as you can see, I went over it with my Micron pen. I like using the Micron pen because I know I'm going to use some watercolors on top of it. As you can see, this funny little character down in the corner. I didn't make this up. This is for real. This is what the larval stage of the salamander looks like. The larval stage meaning, immature before it becomes an adult. And as you can see, it has external gills. Those are those weird shapes on top of his head. This is the head view. He's got 4 legs, 2 in the front and 2 in the back. I used my eraser there to get rid of the pencil lines. And now I'm going to add some watercolor. I like my happy looking salamander, and I'm going to paint him with some gray. But later I'll be mixing in a few other colors just to give it a little zing. I'm carefully trying to avoid those marks I made to note where the yellow spots are going to be. Because with the watercolor you can't put the yellow on top of the gray. So I'm going around them. I kind of went over the line a little bit there. I'm using a size 8 ultra round paintbrush. This probably would have worked better if I used a smaller, say a 6 round, but that's a challenge. I'm not going to reach over and grab a different brush just because it's too big. So here I am working on the tail. Now I'm going to do the legs. In the reference photo, the legs looked a little lighter than the rest of the body, so I'll try to show that here by putting a lighter gray on the legs. Now I'm putting in just a couple dabs of purple. It's not going to be so bright when it dries. Some more purple towards the front of the salamander. I'm doing a wet and wet here. Now I'm working on the little guy, giving him some light gray. Still using my very big brush to try to paint those little skinny legs. I just dropped a darker gray on top of his head, give him a little texture here and there. Doing a little wet and wet. Now I'm going to use the large brush to paint those external gills that look like fancy antennas on top of his head. In the reference photo, one side looked a little lighter than the other, so I'm trying to show that here. In the reference photo, he really did have a smile. I'm sure he's not smiling for the camera, but that's probably just the placement of his mouth, but it was funny. So I had to include it in. Put a little blue on the opposite side from where he had the purple. Dropped it in wet on wet. Dried it real quickly so I can add the yellow spots. I didn't want the gray to run into the yellow. I wanted some nice bright yellow spots. Not painting very carefully, just doing it quickly. Try to spend less than 30 minutes on the whole page between the drawing, the ink, and the watercolor. The little guy lives in the water, so I'm putting a little of the light blues in the background for the little guy. Gave it a little brown on the bottom to show the brown bottom of the creek. Dropping in a little bit more color. I choose a burnt sienna to give a background to the adult salamander. Kind of remind me of the color of leaves on the forest floor. Went around his little smile there, making it nice and juicy, lots of water wet on, dropping the color into the color that's already there. I'm going to leave that one little dark spot up there with next to the light spot. Okay, I'm going to dry this a little bit. And zooming in here, I went into the closet and got out some iridescent paints. These are old Terry Madden watercolors that my husband bought about 10 years ago on eBay. It was a used set of watercolors. He got them for a very good price. He bought me these back when I first started, I think around 2006, 2007, when I was doing Everyday Matters. And I did that when I was laid off from my job before I started my new job. So I'm dropping some iridescent purples and blues onto the salamander. And then I'm going to put a little touch of pink there on the little guy. Okay, move that stuff out of the way, dry it quickly because I want to write on top. Making his nose a little darker around the eyes. Highlighting his mouth there. Just check quickly to see if it went through the page. And now I'm going to do some journaling. 30 pages, 30 days. I got the piece of cardboard not to write in a straight line, but because parts of the salamander's body was still wet and I was getting it all over the bottom of my hand. I was afraid I was going to smudge it too much. So I just blotted it with the cardboard while I was writing. It says linking characters to make a more interesting page. That was from the prompt for the day. It's page 6, March 6th. Trying to figure out which way I want to write. So I turned the book and making some notes about gesturing. Being the careful placement of a few lines and shadows to give the subject individual character. Anita Davies was the artist for today. Making a little note down in the corner about the Sally Rally 2018 and how the people go out at night with their flashlights to guide the salamanders across the road. Make sure they don't get hit by a car. Again, they do this late February, early March, and it has to be a cold and rainy night. And then thinking about it, but I decided to make one more note on the page. And that is just to note that this is an adult and an aquatic larval stage for the spotted salamander.